Hello, second graders. We've been working on opinion writing, and you've been sharing some opinions last week and this week with things about why you feel your mother's so great. And I helped you look at some things about animals and which is the best beak. So the reason that we're working on opinion writing, it is one of our types of reasons that an author will write. So you might remember author's purpose. We talk about this in reading and we talk about this in writing, but there's really three reasons an author will write. And they're using the letters P-I-E, pie. So the one that we're talking about today is P for persuade. And that means to convince the reader of a certain point of view. Convince and persuade are kind of hard to understand sometimes. So it can mean like you're going to talk somebody into something, or you're going to explain so that somebody will agree with you. Okay. So when we do opinion writing, we definitely start by sharing our opinion. And I'm going to show you this Oreo graphic organizer that's a little bit different than the ones we've done before. This is considered a double stuffed Oreo. So it's got extra filling in the middle. It still has the O at the top and the bottom because you should always start with saying your opinion and finish by restating your opinion, kind of like a concluding sentence. But sometimes we're going to have lots of things to say to explain why we have this opinion. So we would be able maybe to give one reason and examples of that reason, and a second reason and examples of that second reason. So we're going to spend a little time before we fill that in, thinking about some things that you would use in expressing your opinion. And starting with the types of things you say when you are actually saying your opinion. So opinion words. I'm going to have to fix that here. Opinion words. To be very careful in my typing because I'll have to go back and forth a lot. Opinion words. So certainly when you say things like, I think, or I believe, or I feel, those are all ways to start it being clear that you are sharing an opinion. I think this, I believe this. Boy, I'm having a hard time typing today, and I wish I knew that this wouldn't change my screen if I had, can't just hit delete. Believe, I feel, even saying my opinion is another way. Now, there's more words than this. Anytime you say something is the best, you're sharing your opinion. Equally, saying something is the worst. Even words that just explain how much you like something. So saying something is amazing or wonderful or incredible or awesome. Any of those words are opinion words. Okay. Now, when we get into this Oreo writing, I'm going to get to that screen again. You are going to start with, let me clear that off. You're going to start with thinking about one of the animals that you know. And I want to remind you that we had Mystery Science, and the Mystery Science that you saw recently was about animal superpowers. And the author of the Mystery Science, the teacher, was really explaining all the amazing things animals can do. So maybe from this video that you saw, you can pick an animal that you feel you could say is the one you think is the most incredible, or the most amazing, or the coolest, or maybe even just like it best. I left on the screen here an example of two of them. That's the octopus at the top as it's hiding. And then if you remember in the video, it camouflaged itself so you couldn't notice it in the rocks. And then of course, a chameleon. And a chameleon is an animal that lots of people think of for changing colors. This is to point out to you that, again, there might be more than one reason you think an animal is really interesting. So if we go back here to your opinion work, You can share in the opinion line an animal that you think is the most interesting. Like maybe you would say the chameleon is the most interesting animal. Now, is there more than one reason you think so? And this is where you might need to stretch your thinking a little bit and come up with some ideas more than just one. Certainly, we have learned that these animals were picked because they're interesting due to how they eat. The chameleon had that long, stretchy tongue, as an example. Another way an animal might be considered really interesting, I'm just going to pick a different color here for this next one, is how, oh, it changed everything. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Oh, well, how they hide. Okay. Another one that might be a reason that you think they're kind of interesting is how they move. Every time I hit the space bar, it changes to that. Okay. It could be their body parts. It could be their sound. Okay. So there's many reasons an animal's interesting. Now, think about the chameleon. Can you give me an example of how they eat? Think of the chameleon. Can you give me an example of how they hide? Can you give me an example of how the chameleon moves? Think of the octopus. Do you know anything about how they eat? What's an example of that? In the video, it explained how they hide. What's an example of how they do that? And tell me an example, give me an example of how they move. And I didn't type this one in, but what body parts make the octopus really interesting? Okay. So what you're going to work on today is you are going to use the double stuffed Oreo. And I think there can be a lot less written in here than what I have done with you yesterday about the best beak, or a couple days ago. So types of things that maybe you would add in here in your opinion, and you could certainly write a whole sentence like, I think the chameleon or octopus is the most interesting. I know I skipped a word there, but I'm not going to fix that right now because that will really cause problems. So just reread that thinking. I think the octopus is the most interesting animal. Certainly can change that. Well, and again, that's what happens here when I hit the delete key. See if I can get that back. Oh, thank goodness. Control Z solved my problem. All right, I won't try to fix that one now. So think of a reason. Could you even just write how it moves? Now, notice the space below it is the example. What is an example of how it moves? For example, it can squeeze through tiny spots, or it can slide over, and think of the different ways an octopus moves. Now remember, a reason you liked it could be something different than this. So down here is a reason that it's an interesting animal is how it hides. Then give an example. How does it hide? You could say, for example, it can camouflage. Or for example, it can squeeze into tiny spaces. Some of the things you might have learned from the video, some of these things you might know from other things, but this is an example of giving more than one reason. And every time you give a reason, you should be able to continue with for example. So I'm actually going to kind of give you a little help on that line. And in your work to submit today, that's not going to be spelled correctly, and I'm not going to take the time to fix it because I'll probably end up losing my screen. I will fill in for you that phrase, for example, so that you don't forget that you're not listing just a lot of different reasons or a lot of examples. Every example is tied to the reason above. So I would like you to do your own bottom row of restating your opinion as well. But we've learned a lot of things about animals, and this is a way for you to share how you also know you can express your opinion by using reasons and examples. So that is our work in science and in writing. So ask questions if you need help. Okay, thanks.